everyone. Welcome to These Guys Got Next. I'm Elijah Fa'afiu, and as always, I am joined by Ravindu Pathirana. This is our NBA podcast where we dissect the world's best basketball league and deliver our basketball takes, whether they be hot, warm, or cold, off the bench. Ravi, we've got a lot to break down today in terms of the Western Conference ahead of the upcoming NBA season, but just wanted to do a quick check-in with you. How is everything on your end, mate?
Yeah, fantastic, Eli. Thanks for asking, mate. Looking forward to starting out this venture and dissecting the NBA and having a bit of fun along the way. How about you?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it's going to be an epic NBA season as always. Today we're going to break down the Western Conference, which is, as always, we've known over the past few years, it's so stacked and it's so loaded. Anyone can finish anywhere in that Western Conference, and today we're going to slowly break down. Given our allotted time, we're going to try to break down as much as we can with each of the 15 teams in the West. Let's get straight into it and start off with the Western Conference champions, the Dallas Mavericks. Obviously, the big news this offseason was Klay Thompson finally leaving the Warriors dynasty, looking for greener pastures. He's gone down to Dallas to join Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic in the hopes of returning to the NBA Finals and hopefully winning and capturing an NBA title. Ravi, what do you assess? What does Klay Thompson bring to this Maverick side?
Yeah, I think he brings a lot of experience and I guess vet presence now. He's been in the league for 13 years since 2011. Especially with his elite 3 and D. I mean, he hasn't had the greatest flashes since the Warriors, but that's coming off the back of a couple of injuries. Definitely, I think, like you mentioned, greener pastures will absolutely maybe revitalize him, give him a new spark to perform a lot better. In saying that, what do you think of the other offseason moves that they made in terms of like Derek Jones Jr. departing and getting some other key pieces?
Yeah, I think outside of Klay and just sticking on Klay briefly, he doesn't need to be the guy he was in the Warriors where he was averaging, 20 or so. If he averages, I'd say at least 12, then he's doing his part to help out Kyrie and Luka. They've also, as you said, made some other off-season additions. Derek Jones Jr., I think, is quite a big loss on the defensive end. They brought in Najee Marshall from the Pelicans in the hopes that he can be the replacement. They've also brought in Quentin Grimes, who I think has a lot of upside as a 3 and D player, and Spencer Dinwiddie, who's been with Dallas before, and he's someone who can definitely help with the ball handling and help Luka and Kyrie in that area. What do you expect from this squad? Another off-season, or a full off-season actually, with the guys like Gafford and PJ Washington, who they traded for at the deadline, and then a second year for Derek Lively. I mean, those guys should definitely contribute for this team.
Yeah, absolutely. I think full off season would do them wonders. The expectation should be NBA Finals once again, especially with the addition of Clay. Given how well Gafford and Washington played throughout since the trade deadline, that was fantastic to see, and they can only get better from now on.
And just wanted to add on Luka Doncic, I think this is a big year for him. I mean, he had an outstanding year last year, finished third in MVP voting, led the NBA in points, second in assists. He was also second in made threes. I think he's going to have to recapture that magic from last year, carry it over, maybe do a little bit more to help the Mavs head over there. So head over to that NBA title. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Luka and Kyrie and now Klay Thompson can do with the Mavericks.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely looking forward to it. And like you mentioned, Luca should have a little bit of, less pressure on him, given Clay's there, and he's an elite catch and shoot 3-point shooter. So that should alleviate some pressure for Luca to make some Luca magic.
Looking ahead to another contender in the West, and you're probably wondering why Ravi's in a different outfit than our Western Conference analysis. There was big news, big trade news that happened as we were recording. So we've had to come in and re-record this segment. The Minnesota Timberwolves trading Karl-Anthony Towns to the New York Knicks for Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo, and looks like a protected first-round pick, and there's probably other assets involved in that trade as well. Wow, I mean, huge blockbuster trade, especially for someone like Cat, who he was drafted first overall by Minnesota, went through all these losing seasons in his first few years, went through all these different coaches, general managers. He finally gets a squad to help him reach the conference finals and and possibly contend for the NBA Finals, and then he gets shipped off to New York. Rav, what do you make of this trade?
Yeah, I think shocked is probably the word. And yeah, it's really hard to make sense of why would they would trade someone like Karl-Anthony Towns, who's been a staple piece. And I thought especially the way they pushed the Western Conference Finals last year, that they would have run it back with the same team and with all the experience they would have gained. Bringing in like Randall and DiVincenzo, I think like for like Randall doesn't fit the needs of the Wolves, and DiVincenzo be really interesting to see how he fits along the likes of Ant or even Mike Conley, even like see how it takes away from the shine of Rob Dillingham or even Terrence Shannon as the upcoming rookies. Yeah, how do you think Randall will fit in at the Wolves?
I personally think it's a solid fit, and I'll bring up DiVincenzo later on, but Randall fits this team's identity because Timberwolves are the best. They were the best defense last season in terms of defensive rating. They were the best defense. So they've already established this identity that they want to win through grit and grind, essentially. Julius Randle's probably the guy in the league who, if you're thinking about grit and grind on the offensive end, he's probably the guy that you want. Someone who can just wear teams down. He can play bully ball, and that sort of fits the Timberwolves' identity, or at least what they're trying to establish. Defensively, he probably won't bring much to the table, but he doesn't have to when you've got Gobert and McDaniels and Ant there in that squad. So I think he's a solid fit for Minnesota offensively. No, he's not like for Towns. But I think the kicker in this trade is DiVincenzo. I think the reason this trade goes through is DiVincenzo. And I think if this trade works out for Minnesota, it will be because of Dante DiVincenzo. He was such a key player for New York last season. Such a great player in terms of his shooting and his wing defense and his toughness. Now, I say wing defense, he's not like a one-on-one stopper per se, but he's a competitor. Like he will fight for every ball, which again fits that grit and grind mentality that the Timberwolves are trying to establish. He was third in made threes last season. So they've already made up for the loss of Towns and his 3-point shooting. So that I think I'm honestly like optimistic for the in terms of if you ask me whether I think the Knicks or the Timberwolves won the trade, I think right now it's even. I think down the line the Timberwolves will win the trade. That's my personal
Yeah.
thoughts on things. I mean, how do you think who sort of came out best in this trade?
I think, given the current positions and like where they were last season, I think an improvement would be for the Knicks. Yeah, I'm going to have to oppose you on that because I think the Knicks can go deeper and the team is, I guess, a better fitting unit, especially with what Towns brings to the table. Yeah, I personally would have thought Minnesota would have run it back with Cat and the team and the other pieces they added. Yeah, yeah, really, really interesting. Really shocked. That's probably the word for it.
Yeah, I'm not sure how you're feeling if you're Anthony Edwards right now. We haven't seen any reaction or anything from Ant Man at all. But just on Ant, I mean, I guess if this trade shows anything, it shows that Minnesota is Anthony Edwards' team now. And last season he emerged as a superstar. He had this campaign with Team USA where I think we were expecting him to be the main. Well, he wanted to be the first option on that team. Didn't really pan out that way when you've got guys like LeBron and Steph and KD on that squad. But if you're Ant Edwards, what do you, how are you feeling this upcoming season? What are the expectations for Ant?
I think he's got to take that superstar or whatever the next step is above superstar, especially with the departure of Cat. This is his team now, and he needs to make it seem that way and play that way.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. He needs to take a massive leap if the Timberwolves are gonna even reach the NBA Finals. But I do think this trade definitely helps both sides of the ledger. And as always, the Wolves have guys like Rudy Gobert, the reigning Defensive Player of the Year, Naz Reid, the reigning Sixth Man of the Year, Jaden McDaniels as well, one of the top on-ball defenders in the league. And they also drafted Rob Dillingham, and I'm excited to see what Dillingham can bring in. It looks like he's the heir apparent to Mike Conley.
Absolutely.
Just moving on now to our next team, the Oklahoma City Thunder, who last season they were the top seed in the West. They probably, in my opinion, had probably the best offseason in the West. With the additions they made in Alex Caruso and Isaiah Hartenstein, they addressed their needs, which was pretty much more defense and more size. How do you think the arrival of those two will help the Thunder?
I think that's just fantastic additions. Like I mentioned, yeah, they fit their needs. Not necessarily the biggest names going around in free agency, but yeah, they supplemented what they needed with Alex Caruso bringing that defensive mindset into that team, also along to go with his playmaking. Same with Isaiah Hartenstein being like a pass first center. We I don't know, that's a not commonly used term, but he has a passing game that we saw what he did with the Knicks last year as well. Yeah, where do you think these guys will go back? Do you reckon they'll be first seed again? Any chance of making the conference finals?
I'm expecting them to be at least a 60-win team. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander pretty much became a top 5 player in the league last season, averaged just over 30 points per game last season, just over 6 assists. He's got a great supporting cast with Jalen Williams, who I think is ready to take another leap this season. To me, his ceiling is Paul George like, which is quite scary when you think about that. And then you've also got Chet Holmgren, who it's easy to forget last year was actually his rookie season, but he's such a unicorn in the way he plays, his shooting range, the way he can impact players on defense makes him such a unique player. And if we weren't talking about Wemby, we'd probably be talking about Chet Holmgren and the impact he has for OKC. I'm interested to see, do you think these guys have, with these additions of Caruso and Hartenstein, do they have the legs to win the Western Conference and even reach the NBA Finals and possibly win a championship?
I think given the competitiveness of the West, it'll be really hard to say in terms of how they perform. Just like I mentioned, do they have the legs? Right? They similar to with that young Wolves team, they didn't have any of the experience beforehand, but after going into this season, they'll have a wealth of experience they gained from the playoffs last season, which will help them elevate themselves and make them stand out a lot more because experience was seemed to be the thing that got the better of them last season.
We're now going to move on to the Denver Nuggets. I don't know about you, Rav, but out of the 4 teams that we're talking about, to me, the Nuggets are the team that I'm worried about, only because this past offseason they lost Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, which to me was such a big loss. They've added Russell Westbrook. Do you think Russ's arrival makes up for KCP's departure?
I don't think so. Like because KCP brings a lot of value in terms of 3 and D play, one of the elite 3 and D players in the team, and he was the starting shooting guard alongside Jamal Murray in the guard spot. But Russell Westbrook has been on a decline for some time now. But we know what Russ brings to any team, which is his veteran presence and his elite leadership. That's not to be discredited. But as for a like for like, definitely, yeah, it is a bigger loss losing KCP and gaining Westbrook. But I have
Yeah,
seen opportunities where if Russ takes more of a cutter type of role to go side Jokic's passing game, that will allow Russ to thrive in that role as well. But again, it's just a matter of who are the shooters around Jokic that they're going to play around. Do you think Russ comes off the bench, or do you reckon he takes that 2 guard spot alongside Murray?
I think he should come off the bench. I think he should be the 6th man. We saw with the Clippers how effective he was in that role coming off the bench and how much energy and spark he brought when he came off the pine. So I'm hoping to see him do the same thing here with Denver. Just with Denver, I mean, as long as they have Nikola Jokic, who is the best player in the league, they're always going to compete. But it's always going to be that supporting cast around them. One of the concerns I have is around Jamal Murray as well. Um, I'm not sure if you paid attention to him at the Olympics, but probably not the best campaign for Canada. I think he only averaged 6 points and he shot 14% from 3 with the numbers in front of me, which is pretty awful. The Denver president came out and said that Murray was still dealing with injuries, which if that was the case, why was he even playing in the Olympics in the first place? But also he just signed the contract extension as well, which was quite interesting timing given it came off the back of his poor form in the Olympics. Do you still think Jamal Murray is still the appropriate second option to Jokic?
I think at this stage, yeah, because they don't really have anyone else to support Jokic at this stage. Because Christian Brown, is he the next man up? Who else do we go? They go in a direction of trading for an better star? But yeah, at this stage, Murray has to be that guy. He has to be the second option alongside Jokic, especially with the fact losing someone like KCP who brings that 3-point shooting. Murray's got to step up his ability to shoot those threes.
The other guys you look to on their rosters, Michael Porter Jr. and Aaron Gordon. I, I I'll bring up MPJ. I think he needs to be someone who can create his own offense. I think the system in Denver works for him because he literally just has to be open and make threes, which so that role in that system works for him. Aaron Gordon, I think is fine. I don't see him stepping up at all. Interesting you brought up Christian Brown because with the loss of KCP and the year before Bruce Brown heading over, leaving Denver, you got guys like Christian Brown, Peyton Watson, Julian Strother. Those are the guys who Denver are going to hopefully rely on to take a big step, which I think is a massive leap for those guys in particular to make. So I think the only way that Denver stays in the top four is if those younger guys in the rotation can make that jump.
Yeah, 100%.
Moving on now to the Phoenix Suns. I think I sort of had high expectations for these guys when I heard that Bradley Beal would be joining Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. Obviously, things didn't pan out quite as well last season. Katie and Devin Booker had an amazing offseason with Team USA. And I think Kevin Durant also probably had one of his healthiest seasons in quite a long time. What are your expectations for that particular duo of KD and Devin Booker?
I think it's really hard to say, man, because the competitiveness of the West Side, like I mentioned, it's so hard because there's a lot of expectations in this team. I expect them to make a big push to the Western Conference Finals. Just particularly adding someone like Tyus Jones, who's a true point pass first guy, allowing the scorers in this team like the Books, Beal and KD to shoot the ball. But again, yeah, Booker, I think, will have the biggest upside this season, especially playing that role that he did in the Olympics, being able to adapt his game to fit whatever situation. So I think that'll bring a wealth of experience in for the rest of the season. Yeah, well, how do you think Beal, like what are Beal's expectations this season given what he did last?
Yeah, with Bradley Beal, he missed 29 games last season, which is considering that the Suns still won 49 last season is quite amazing. He did struggle to overcome injury, and I think it helps having Tyus Jones as well because he'll take the load off Beal in terms of the ball handling duties. So Booker and Beal don't have to worry so much about being the true point guard when you've got guys like Tyus Jones, and I think they signed Monte Morris as well. So they've got some backup there to help to allow the big three to be able to score and do their thing on the offensive end. They've also got a new coach with Mike Budenholzer who's won an NBA title. It's going to be interesting to see how Budenholzer impacts this big three, how he allows them to operate. My concern with the Suns, and this is probably the reason why they didn't do as well last season, other than the Beal injury, was their depth and the lack of depth. Like, I don't know if I could name 3 or 4 or many other of the bench options outside of that big three, which is why I'm glad that they brought in Tyus Jones and Monte Morris, and I think they signed Mason Plumlee as well. So you got some size there in the interior. So I'm interested to see how this big three goes. I think, like you said, like you brought up, I can see them reaching the conference finals. That's probably their ceiling. But in the stacked West, it's going to be quite tricky for the Suns.
Yeah. Age might be the other thing as a concern, right? Just in the flag it because KD is on the decline, Beal's probably on the decline as well, but still probably has 2 or 3 seasons left to give. But this may or may not be one of their last chances to make a good run.
Moving on now to the New Orleans Pelicans, who I think made one of the other big off-season moves in acquiring DeJounte Murray from the Hawks. Just right off the bat, how do you see DeJounte's fit with this team that already has Zion, Brandon Ingram, and CJ McCollum?
Oh, love it, man. Love it. Absolutely love it. It takes a bit of pressure off Deontay to be that second option alongside Trae Young when he was at the Hawks. And he adds a lot of defensive depth to that team as well, because we know what he did, his capabilities at the Hawks, especially his breakout season back in San Antonio. And yeah, we know he's a good enough playmaker to fit alongside the likes of CJ and BI. And I think if Zion stays healthy, these guys should make a push deep into the playoffs. So, like, given all the names we mentioned, is do you think they should move like a piece like BI to get like a bigger star, or do you think there's any moves they can make in the before the trade deadline to make a deeper run?
Well, Brandon Ingram is the key for them this season. I think the offseason he had where he was mentioned in trade talks, he didn't get his contract extension that he wanted. Whatever mood he's in heading into this upcoming season is going to determine how the Pelicans play. If he turns up, he's in a grumpy mood, that's going to reflect on the Pelicans and they could probably miss out on the playoffs. If he comes in, plays well, increases his value at the trade deadline, then the Pelicans could be definitely be in there competing for a playoff spot. I think maybe not so much trading for a bigger star, but they definitely need some depth in the Pelicans. I think the DeJounte trade, where they lost Dyson Daniels and Larry Nance, was quite impactful on the bench in New Orleans. They also lost Najee Marshall to the Mavs, and they lost Jonas Valanciunas as well. So they basically, I think their only center option or their starting center option is Daniel Tice. Other than him, there's not really many options in terms of bigs and the Pelicans. So Brandon Ingram is definitely going to be the key. I think the Pelicans, if they want to give themselves a shot, then they might have to look at trading BI. But again, it's all on Brandon Ingram to sort of increase his trade value. How do you see things with Brandon Ingram? Do you think he comes off firing? Do you think he'll be motivated from the off season he had, or do you think his mood is going to kind of bring things down for the Pelicans?
I think if he's after a bag, or if he wants to, like you said, increase his trade value, he needs to come out firing. He needs to show teams like why he was, the second option back in the Lakers, or why he was that, budding young star. And he definitely needs to. Yeah, I think he'll come out firing. I think no questions asked on that. That I got no doubt on that side of things. Yeah, especially like adding someone like Deontay as well, taking some pressure off Bi, because we know that Deontay can shoot the ball as well. But yeah, I think he comes off firing.
And as always, we should bring up Zion Williamson. It's not the Pelicans without Zion. He played 70 out of 82 games, so he also had a healthy season, like we mentioned with KD and another player, Anthony Davis, who we'll bring up later on. And when he's on, he was firing for the Pelicans last season. And you saw when they were competing in the play-in, and there was that game against the Lakers where the Pelicans could have snatched that win, but as soon as Zion went off in that fourth quarter, things just came crumbling down for the Pelicans, and just things just weren't the same. So they definitely need Zion in there to in order to be able to compete.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a focal point of that team.
We move on now to the Sacramento Kings. And again, another big offseason acquisition, getting DeMar DeRozan to join De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis. I think it's an upgrade from what they had before with Harrison Barnes. Where do you see the fit with DeMar, with De'Aaron and DeMontis, who I'm now just saying their names, I'm now going to nickname them 3D, DeMar, DeMontis, and De'Aaron.
Yeah,
How do you
love
see
it.
that
Love it.
trio working?
Yeah, I think at crunch time they'll be one of the best teams in crunch time, because we know what Fox was capable of last season, and bringing DeRozan onto that team as well. He adds a lot of value in the fourth quarter and clutch time performances. DeRozan will bring a lot of playmaking into that side as well. We know Fox is a great playmaker as is, but having someone like DeRozan, who averaged nearly 5.5 assists a game over the last 7 years, adds that extra value of extra depth of playmaking, and takes some pressure off Sabonis and Fox as well. Yeah, what do you think about the 3 point shooting? We know Demar's not a great 3 point shooter. Doesn't take many. How do you think that will compare in terms of Harrison Barnes?
Well, I think in terms of the 3 point shooting, Barnes was probably the better option over DeMar. But the Kings still have some young players on that squad who can contribute the 3-point shooting. Keegan Murray, I think, was a standout last season in terms of his ability to shoot from deep. Keon Ellis as well, who probably he was someone who was quite under the radar last season for the Kings, but he has that upside as a 3-and-D player, so he's definitely going to help out with the Kings this season. And then we also got Kevin Huerter, who was barely a factor last season. A couple of years ago, when the Kings were lighting the beam, Kevin Huerter was such a crucial part of that team. So they're hoping Kevin Huerter, who is going to be coming off shoulder surgery, I believe, they're going to hope that Kevin Huerter is able to get that shoulder working, and then he's going to be able to fire that shot. So I think they won't lose too much in terms of 3-point shooting. I think DeMar will be able to do what he can, and yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And in terms of Sabonis and Fox, just what are your thoughts on those two? Will they be able to maintain their form from last season?
Yeah, I definitely think they will be able to. I don't know how much depth, like I guess depth is probably not the right word there, but I don't know how deep they can push in the playoffs with the addition of DeRozan. But I think during the regular season they should be able to, yeah, at least push the playoffs.
Looking ahead to a team who, one of the teams who I think can improve quite a bit this season, the Memphis Grizzlies. And last season they were absolutely battered with injuries. I think I've got a stat in front of me that combined they missed 592 games due to injury, and that's with guys like Morant out. Uh, Jaren Jackson was healthy, but Desmond Bain was out, and basically a whole lot of options. And then you had guys like Vince Williams and GG Jackson, who we never even heard of before last season, stepping up and becoming big contributors for Memphis. I want to talk about Ja Morant because we know the season he had last year, he served a 25-game suspension because of his, he wanted to fire off the course, or however you want to put it. He comes back, he plays well in the few games he did play for the Memphis, and then he's out with injury. What is Ja's mindset heading into this season? Because not long ago, they were the second seed in the Western Conference, and then they had the season they had last year. So, I mean, if you're Ja Morant, how do you approach this upcoming year?
I think adding a lot of maturity around me, like it's the people you kind of position yourself with outside of the court. If you keep off, stay away from those off court issues, like you said, firing down the wrong course, then he should be able to go back to what he did in 2022, which was showing the world that he's one of the top 5-point guards in the league right now. And his priority should be, all right, basketball is my number one thing, and I need to get back to winning. It's simple as that. Like, easier said than done, obviously, but he needs to get his mind right in terms of basketball is my priority. I'm not going to let anything jeopardize or anything come in between me and winning. Yeah.
They've also had They also made a big move in the draft in terms of selecting Zach Edey, who's coming off a College Player of the Year at Purdue. How do you see him fitting? Because I feel like he's going to have to contribute right away if the Grizzlies are going to make that leap.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting how like the league is sort of trending towards this twin towers, especially after what the Timberwolves did, right? The two big like 7-footers. I think one of the best things is around him. He is a great defensive player. Averaged 4 blocks with 15 points and 14 rebounds last season, and he was the only person over 7'1" to score over 750 points since like Wilt, Kareem, David Robinson, Shaq. That puts him in an elite list of players. So has a high ceiling with his game, and I reckon with Jaren Jackson Jr.'s defensive capabilities, pair that up with Zach Edey's presence, a little on enough to contribute. I think that'd be fantastic for these guys.
Yeah, I agree. I think Edey is pretty much the replacement for Steven Adams from a couple of years ago, that big interior presence who can rebound and affect shots at the rim. The advantage Edey has is that he has more offensive upside than Steven Adams ever had, really. We know how Jaren Jackson and Desmond Bain can operate as a trio. They were the second seed a couple years back, and actually they were back-to-back second seeds in the Western Conference. Do you see them with those three coming back into the fold, Memphis reaching that second seed level again?
I don't think they'll reach second seed. Maybe 6, 5, 6 will probably be a better option for them to start off with, especially with Ja, being away and the addition of Zach Edey. They might take half a season, quarter of a season to figure out the right way to fit in the likes of Zach Edey. But I think personally with Zach Edey, all he needs to do is just grab boards. He just needs to be a double guy every night, and that'll just take enough pressure off the other four guys or other three guys to perform at their best.
I'll end this analysis of the Grizzlies. They used 51 different starting lineups last season, which is wild
It's
when you
absurd.
put that into
Yeah.
perspective. And yeah, 592 games combined lost due to injury. So hopefully the Grizzlies can bounce back from that. Looking ahead now to the Los Angeles Clippers, and this is probably the analysis I've been dreading out of all the Western Conference teams. You're probably in the same boat, Rav, but yeah, not the greatest offseason, losing Paul George, letting him head off to Philly. Personally, I don't mind the move. I'm not as irate as other Clippers fans are, but that leaves Kawhi and James Harden as the main duo now. We've got a new stadium opening up, the Intuit Dome. How do you see things going with this Kawhi and Harden duo uh, life without Paul George, basically?
Yeah, so yeah, as the viewers would come to know, Clippers team is Eli and mine. We're big fans of the Clippers, and they've been for such a long time. Unfortunately, it comes with a lot of heartbreak. Yeah, but just getting back on track, I think Kawhi and Harden will work out. But again, losing PG is quite massive for us in terms of how it all unfolded, which is not ideal in terms of the conversations that went down. But looking back in the past, I think the Kawhi and Harden duo worked a lot better than the Kawhi and then the Harden and PG. But they're played in pairs almost, right? So you got the Harden and Kawhi, then you got the PG and Westbrook that work really well together. But again, big loss for us in terms of other pieces. We losing like Mason Plumlee as well. It was quite an important piece in the rotation. But that opens up opportunities for a guy like Zoo to step up as a second option, or even Terrence Mann. Who do you think out of those two should be the next man up?
I think it has to be Terrence. Well, I've always thought that Terrence Mann should be the guy who steps up. I actually think it's Zubac because I think Zubac showed last season that he can help out with the boards and become a double guy on his best night. Man is probably plateaued over the last 2 years, which I'm a bit disappointed about. But going back to Kawhi and Harden, I still think it's going to be a big year coming up for James Harden. I think he's going to have to go back or at least recapture some of that form that made him an MVP back in Houston. Now we know he's a bit up there in age now, so the athleticism sort of gone. He probably doesn't have that scoring. He's probably not the same scoring threat as he was a little while ago. But just to give you an idea, 2019 and 2020, that was his last year in Houston. He averaged 34.3 points and he averaged 11.8 free throw attempts. And we've always known James Harden is the guy who can drive to the rim, draw contact, draw fouls. Now, since then, because the refs have changed up the way they rule those sort of plays at the rim, last season he averaged 16.6 points and averaged 4.8 free throw attempts, which is quite a massive decline from the player he used to be. Given he was in Brooklyn with KD and Kyrie, and he was with Embiid over at the 76ers, there probably wasn't much asked of him offensively to do. It wasn't much of a weight to carry. But this season with Kawhi, and we don't know what his knee is going to be like this season. Like he just had off-season surgery, which means he should be good to go for the start of the season. But that's going to rely so much on James Harden to carry the load. And yeah, he's gonna this team's going to go as far as James Harden can take them, which sad to say I don't think is very far. Personally, what do you make of some of their additions they made in the offseason of Derek Jones and Batum and Chris Dunn? I think Mo Bamba as well. I think they had Kevin Porter Jr. as well. So not the biggest names, but probably guys who could help out Kawhi and Harden.
Yeah, I think each one of those guys have shown good promise in the last few years. Like especially DJJ, what he brings defensively and from a 3 and D perspective. Like what he's done with the Mavs. I don't have a lot of hope for Batum or Dunn. I'm going to be brutally honest on that front. KPG and KBJ and Mo Bamba. Definitely a lot of upside available, especially with the departure of Mason Plumlee allows Mo Bamba to come off the bench and be that backup center behind Zoo, and maybe even not unlock Kawhi a wee bit in terms of taking some of the load off, given that we did sign a number of players. I mean, we have added a little bit of depth, just in case Kawhi goes down. There's guys that we can rely on. KPG is known for showing flashes of great scoring outputs. But I think we'd be really good. And one of the other additions that we did was get Jeff Van Gundy as our assistant coach. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm sort of excited in a way. There's a stat that in the years that Van Gundy was a head coach, he always had a top six NBA defense, which is quite promising if you're a Clippers fan. I guess the guys like DJJ and Batum and Dunn were brought in to help out on the defensive end. So I think he's hoping that Van Gundy can unlock those guys and bring the best out of those guys on the defensive end, and even unlock Kawhi as well, and then get him back to that amazing defender that we know he can be when healthy. So interesting to see how things play out with the Clippers. Heading crosstown to the Lakers, LeBron and AD, the two probably two of the top 15 guys in the NBA. Interesting how they've made a couple of additions through the draft to join their squad. Just want to touch on LeBron and AD. How do you think things are going to go with those two? I think AD's coming off one of his healthier seasons that he's had in his career, and LeBron never fails to amaze me what he can do when he's 40 years old, and he's still as dominant as ever. How do you assess the impact those two are going to have on the Lakers?
I think AD's health and especially him, being in the prime of himself, and he should be playing a minimum of 60 games next season, which will make him, the leader in scoring in that lineup. And they should have their dynamic change a wee bit in terms of LeBron steps off the gas in terms of scoring. Like still score 20 plus points a game, go for gold. But again, one of the best things we've seen LeBron do is adapt his game over the years. The dominant player he was in 2018, probably his last dominant year. Then coming on to the Lakers, and then becoming more of a pass first guy. In terms of like the declination speaks for itself. He had his highest assist numbers since the 1920 season where they won the chip, and his 3 point percentage was the highest it's ever been. It's a matter of not declining. Like he is declining athletically, fair enough. Father Time never loses, but his ability to impact the game at a high level as being the pass first player he is, I don't think he's probably got 2-3 seasons in him at least. I'd say at a decent level.
Yeah, for me, I mean, as great as LeBron and AD are, it's the supporting cast around them that's going to be key. Guys like D'Angelo Russell, Austin Reeves, who I feel like last season we were expecting him to have that breakout year because he was just playing with Team USA. He had a stint with those guys, and I think we were expecting big things from Austin Reeves. He didn't play bad last season, but he probably didn't take that leap that we'd hoped for. Possibly be that third option to LeBron and AD. So we're hoping that this season is going to be the year with Austin Reeves. And they also added Dalton Connect, who I quite like, as it's probably one of my favorite picks coming out of the NBA draft. A guard coming out of Tennessee. How do you think Connect is going to go, and how's he going to fit in with? He's also got JJ Redick now as his coach, so I'm quite excited to see how he contributes.
One of the only kind of downsides for Dalton Connect is he's 23 years old as a rookie. But again, that doesn't minimize the amount of experience that he'll bring to this lineup as a rookie, given his the college stint. But like you mentioned, adding JJ, a fantastic basketball mind, and given JJ's game, as a catch and shoot person and an elite 3 point shooter for the Clippers, as he has been, and him, very excited, like you said, just to see what they draw up for the likes of Dalton Connect, and even allowing LeBron James to have more shooting options alongside him, which would be fantastic. How do you think I guess Dalton Connect and Austin Reeves, how do you reckon they will like play alongside each other?
I think they're great because it gives LeBron some options in the corner in terms of 3-point shooting. There's some options on either side of him. If LeBron just decides to drive to the rim and draw some attention, he can kick it out to either one of those guys, and hopefully they can make the tray. And they've also got, again, as I brought up, JJ Redick is their coach. And I know JJ Redick is probably quite high on Austin Reeves, and there's probably a reason he brought in Dalton Connect as well, because he probably has a vision to use those two as some great 3-point shooters in that squad. So I'm excited to see what JJ can draw up for those two in particular, and hopefully we'll see how they will help out LeBron and AD this season.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
A few more teams to go in our Western Conference breakdown. We're now going to head to the Golden State Warriors. Steph Curry, as always, we know how great he is. My question is who's going to be that man to step up as the second option? They just lost Klay Thompson. It's not like Klay Thompson was the second option last season. He was already on the decline, but they've made some moves to replace Klay Thompson. How do you see things going in terms of replacing what Klay brought to Golden State?
I think, yeah, Buddy Hield was a great addition, right? He's shot the second most threes since coming into the league, behind Steph Curry. And last season, he shot 40% on 3 points in 25 minutes and had zero point 0.8 steals per game as well. I think they might be a hopeful call, like you said in the introduction, might be a cold, lukewarm, or hot takes. One of the things I think I would like to see Curry have that rendition of the 2022 run that they had, pushing them all the way to the finals and winning the chip. But I think, yeah, addition of Buddy Hield is very good for them, because his role can be expanded and he'll be more of a second option to Curry, especially with his 3-point shooting. I guess the other side of things to kind of consider is Jonathan Kuminga. Wasn't given the extension that he wanted. How do you think he'll go? Can he take that next leap into getting a bigger extension like he wanted?
I've got high expectations for Kuminga this season. He's coming off a career year where he had highs in points, rebounds, and assists. And he played in 74 games, so health is not an issue for Kuminga. It's quite interesting that Kuminga's excelled quite so well in Golden State given the system, and because I remember when he was first drafted, I didn't think the Golden State system, fit a guy like Kuminga, with his athleticism and his versatility that he brings as a forward. But clearly, the Warriors see Kuminga as part of their future in a way. There was talks during the offseason that they were trying to get Paul George and Markkanen, but they weren't willing to give up Kuminga and also Brandon Bajemski. So they obviously see those two as guys who can contribute alongside Curry. But because we're relying on Kuminga to be the second option for Golden State, I don't see Golden State making the playoffs this season, just because I can't see Curry, given that he's older and his body's going to start breaking down. He's got such a big weight to carry, and we're relying on Kuminga to be the second option. It's going to be a tough uphill climb for the Warriors to reach the playoffs. Any final thoughts on the Warriors? I think another guy is Andrew Wiggins as well, who I always forget is on that roster. But any final thoughts on the Warriors?
No, I think, like you mentioned, just to maybe one final thought. Who do you reckon will be the next face of Golden State Warriors? Like, we know Steph's on the decline, Clay's left, Dre's on the way out. Who do you reckon will be the next franchise player?
Well, I do think it's Kuminga, and I do think Golden State feels like it's Kuminga, the way that they held on to him during the off season. But if you're a young team out there that's looking for a big piece, then you're obviously going to try and do as what you can to trade for Kuminga. So I'm interested to see what the market is for Kuminga when it comes to the trade deadline. But if Golden State can hold on to Kuminga, then I think Kuminga can definitely be the face of the franchise in the future. Cool. few more teams to go, and this is sort of where we're nearing the cellar dwellers, or as I like to call this tier, the teams that are playing capture the flag for the NBA draft. So let's start off with the Utah Jazz. Their big offseason move was re-signing Larry Markkinen, which is quite a big addition. But they've got a few veterans on that squad who could get doubts at the trade deadline. How do you see the Jazz going about the season? You know, when they've got guys like um, Collins and Walker Kessler who are on that roster who could possibly head off to another team.
I think Jazz, like you mentioned, as the capture the flag, right? That's so important for next year. Trying to build up like a good position for them to get high on their draft, to get Cooper Flag. So I think, yeah, maybe they do go all in on getting Cooper Flag and building around Markin and giving them another year or two for Markin to be that number one option, and then bring Cooper Flag to supplement Markin's game. Yeah, like you mentioned, possibly John Collins, Walker Kessler, and Isaiah Collier could be three potential pieces that they move. I don't think they'll move Jordan Clarkson because he is that spark off the bench for them, and then they do need that. But yeah, there's a lot of bigs in the team, especially with the addition of Kyle Filipowski through the draft. I think one of the guys, either Collins or Kessler, most likely might end up being dealt before the deadline. Yeah, do you think Walker Kessler can have a similar season to kind of increase his draft value or increase the prospects of him staying in the Jazz?
He had such a weird season last year in that when he came in as a rookie, he immediately stamped his ground as this great rim protector and shot blocker. I mean, last season he was doing the same thing. He averaged 2.4 blocks per game, but he only averaged 23 minutes, which is weird when you're considering Kessler had just come off a campaign. He was also part of the Team USA as well with Austin Reeves and some of those other younger guys. So he averaged 23 minutes and he was coming off the bench as well. So it's quite interesting that the Jazz used him that way. I imagine it's just because for as much upside he has as a defender, offensively he's probably not the best option to have out on the court. So I mean, as long as Walker Kessler can develop his shots and improve in the pick and roll game, those minutes will increase and he can increase his trade value. What do you think they did well in the draft with guys like Cody Williams and Collier and Filipowski? Those definitely seem to be some key guys who can help them out moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the addition of Cody Williams and Kyle Filipowski was really good to supplement that team. But again, it really depends on how well these guys can perform given the ability or how many minutes they can get, right? If they do decide to move places or pieces and go all in for the 2025 draft, it'll allow some of these younger guys to perform and make sure they are staples of this team. One of the guys I do want to mention was Keontae George, who's coming into his second year. This season, he averaged 14, 4, and 2 on 39% shooting as a rookie and showed some great flashes of being just a pure bucket getter. And I do expect him to take a bigger leap this season, especially given the experience that he had. We don't expect a rookie to be great all the time in his first year, but definitely looking forward to seeing how he develops throughout the season.
We're going to look a bit at we're going to look now at the San Antonio Spurs. Now, whoever planned this episode did a great job of putting the Spurs near the bottom, or near last, just so our listeners can, have a reason to listen to the back end of the podcast rather than us talking about the Jazz and the Trailblazers. So, good on you, Rav. I'll give props to you. Thanks for organising that. Um, Victor Wembanyama, amazing rookie season, an absolute. I mean, we talk about unicorns. He is the unicorn of the unicorns of all the unicorns. I don't know how else you can describe a guy like Victor Wembanyama. What leap do you see Victor making this season, especially with a couple of veteran pieces added to the squad?
Yeah, I think massive piece in terms of how they added the likes of CP3, but I expect Wembanyama to make an even bigger jump and possibly walk away with the DPOY or most improved for this season. We know what he's able to do, and yeah, it'd be an absolute privilege watching him thrive and be the unicorn of unicorns, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I agree. I think Chris Paul is a key addition to that team. yes, he didn't have the greatest year last year with Golden State. He's clearly on the decline, but his leadership and the fact that he is a true point guard is going to help out Wemby and some of those other younger guards on that team with Stephon Castle, who they got in the draft, Trey Jones and Devin Vassell. So his playmaking, his IQ on the court is definitely going to help out some of those younger players and allow members of that core to focus on their skill set. In terms of Devin Vassell, Calvin Johnson, you know Jeremy Sohan, some of those other guys in that team who we've seen can help Wemby out. Who do you see sort of making the leap out of those guys or possibly helping Wemby have a big year?
I'm going to go for one of the guys that you didn't mention of the three. I think Stephon Castle will probably have the biggest impact coming off the bench because, again, like we mentioned, capture the flag, right? These guys are in contention to get Cooper Flag. And imagine a piece of Stephon Castle, Wemby, and Cooper Flag in a couple of years down. Yeah, bring along CP3 just to get allow that more playmaking sort of side to that Spurs side. We know what happened last season. There were opportunities for Wemby to get the ball, especially under the rim. But the team being young and immature as they are in terms of their playmaking, they didn't see those opportunities. But bringing CP3 on to that side, yeah, absolutely. I think allowing Wemby to have more touches, just bringing a level of playmaking to that team, will allow someone like Stephon Castle to, get more confident being playing in the NBA.
Yeah, just to add on to that, for me, it's Devin Vassell. I think he's one of the most underrated players in the league. Um, we'll do want to note that it sounds like he's going to be out until early November because he's still recovering from a foot surgery that he had during the off season. So, but for me, Devin Vassell is going to be the guy to sort of help out and possibly be that second option when he's healthy. And last but not least, the Portland Trail Blazers. Interesting makeup in the squad. They've got a couple of young guys. They've got a whole lot of veterans who probably need to be traded at some point. Let's start off with Scoot Henderson. An okay rookie season last year, probably not what we expected out of a guy who was drafted so highly. But do you think Scoot has the potential to, be the guy in his second year?
Yeah, absolutely. I think he showed some great flashes last season in terms of who he is and how much of playmaking that he can do and scoring as well. Let's be honest about that. But yeah, I think Scoot Henderson is the face of the franchise, which leaves questions up for Anthony Simmons. He was next man up after Dame left. So do you think that's a piece worth trading away?
I think Anthony Simons is definitely the guy who will probably be traded. I think the future in terms of the guards is Scoot and Shaden Sharp. Anthony Simons, I think, can be a great contributor elsewhere. If Portland decides to keep him on, then one of those guys is probably going to have to be the sixth man, which will probably be Shaden. But for me, I think they need to start looking towards the future and building around Scoot and Shaden Sharp. Out of those, veterans who are on that squad, Jeremy Grant, Robert Williams, DeAndre Ayton, who do you see, the most likely being traded out of those guys?
I think possibly Jeremy Grant and Robert Williams. The reason I say that is DeAndre Ayton should stay there and be alongside Donovan Clinton to be that main guy, and then they can work around that young core. Jeremy Grant has had its time in Pistons and also at the Nuggets as well. So I think this might probably be coming on the back end of his prime. Robert Williams, we know, was injury prone, but I think there should be some decent assets that they should be able to get back over in a couple of picks that'll help them get towards Cooper Flag or put them in a position to get win capture the flag.
And finally, well, I know I said finally with Portland, but it seems that I've completely messed up and I've managed to skip a team, the Houston Rockets, which is fine because I actually think the Houston Rockets are going to have a great season. I think there's a lot of upside with this young core. I think they're going to be one of the most exciting teams to watch this upcoming season with guys like Jalen Green, Shingun. They drafted Reed Shepherd, Jabari Smith on their roster, Amin Thompson. You can go on. Like, it's just a whole lot of young guys and Dylan Brooks and Fred VanVleet as well and Steven Adams. Like, when you rattle those names off, that is a fun team to think about. just on that young core of Houston, who do you think is under the most pressure to succeed, and could possibly be traded down the line?
I think that'll be Jalen Green because Reed Shepherd most likely will be coming to a spot and trying to take over because Jalen Green has shown great flashes of who he is and what he can do, but I feel like Reed Shepherd might just get the keys to the city and just say, hey, this is your team, run it. Yeah, yeah, I think maybe Jalen Green will get traded to allow for more pieces because, the Rockets are probably the second best young core in the league behind the OKC, but still got a ways to go before they get to OKC status.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is Jalen Green, for as explosive of a scorer that he is, and as athletic as he is. He needs to be consistent if he's going to stay in Houston. I don't think we've, other than I think there was a short stint in the back end of last season where he absolutely exploded, and part of that was because Şengün was out, so the ball was more in his hands, and he was able to score at will. But he needs to be the guy to prove that he can play alongside Şengün, that the two of them can cooperate. The other thing with this young core is how are they going to dish out the minutes? All those names I've just rattled off before, they're all not going to get time on the court. One or two players are going to miss out. They could be guys who could be traded. Tari Eason, Amin Thompson, Jabari Smith. But I think the veterans they have in their squad, Van Vliet, Brooks, and Steven Adams, I'm actually particularly excited to see how Steven Adams can impact that team. Because we've seen in the past how much he can impact winning when he was with the Thunder and when he was with the Grizzlies. So I'm looking forward to getting the big Kiwi boy back on the court.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a good number of them. Someone you forgot to mention, Jeff Green, still hanging around. Yeah, in the team. So yeah, and again, like Fred VanVleet brings a lot of experience in terms of his ability as a point guard to shoot first and make plays, and also bringing championship experience to this team, which would be really valuable for these young guys to make some good leaps in the coming years. Not saying 2024-25 season will be great for them, but they definitely should have some flashes moving into 25-26, definitely.
That wraps up our preview of the Western Conference ahead of the upcoming NBA season. Ravi, as always, big thank you to you for being here as always and dissecting the Western Conference. Next time we're going to have a look at the Eastern Conference and who's going to come out of the East here, the Celtics, the Knicks, the Sixers. We'll see. So until then, we got next and the Matiwa.